When we think about the National Football League, we usually picture the camera flashes, the primetime lights, those roaring stadiums with 80,000 people losing their minds. But the truth is, that only tells half the story. The real game, the game that actually dictates the fate of these multi-billion-dollar empires, it's played in the shadows. It's played in quiet, perfectly insulated rooms where men in tailored suits decide the destinies of men in helmets and pads. Welcome to this NFL Nexus Explainer. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on one of the most storied, volatile, and, let's be completely honest here, currently desperate franchises in professional sports.
We're just going to skip the pleasantries today and get right down to it, because right now, deep in the neon heart of Las Vegas, there is a profound, almost invisible power struggle unfolding, and it is absolutely fascinating to watch. I mean, think about it. You look at the official organizational chart, right? You see the names you're supposed to see, you see the principal owner, you see the general manager, you see the head coach. It all looks totally normal on paper. But who actually holds the absolute gravity in that building? When push comes to shove, who is really running the Las Vegas Raiders?
Well, everything changed in a matter of seconds, behind closed doors. We're talking about boardroom politics that are so secretive, so heavily guarded that mere rumors can literally alter the trajectory of a franchise's entire decade. The undeniable gravity of recent ownership shifts has fundamentally rewired the circuitry of this team. The Raiders, they're not just making standard business moves anymore, they are completely reshaping the very nature of their franchise authority. And as you'll see, it all traces back to one singular, undeniable figure.
Section 1. The power behind the shield. A shifting dynamic in Vegas.
Okay, let's dive into this. The Las Vegas Raiders are, right now, teetering on the precipice of total irrelevancy. They are absolutely desperate for an anchor. And into that massive void, a new presence has arrived. Let's trace this evolution, because it's wild when you lay it all out. For over 2 decades, from 2000 all the way to 2022, Tom Brady forged an unmatched resume on the field. He was the architect of 2 completely separate dynasties. We all know that part. But look closely at 2024. This was the pivot. This is where it gets incredibly interesting. First, he steps into the broadcasting booth as the lead NFL analyst for Fox. That alone commands a massive weekly public platform. But far more importantly, in that exact same year, the NFL owners officially approved his stake as a minority owner of the Las Vegas Raiders. So the transition is completely locked in. From the hash marks, up to the national broadcast booth, and then directly into the owner's box. It's an ascent of power that the league has rarely, if ever, seen in its entire history.
Let's really look at what fuels that kind of power. Because these are not just cold, sterile statistics. These are literal weapons of absolute influence. 7 Super Bowl championships, 5 Super Bowl MVPs, nearly 90,000 passing yards, 649 touchdowns, 251 quarterback wins. I want you to imagine the sheer weight of that legacy when a guy like that speaks in a meeting. Whenever the long-term franchise direction is discussed, whenever a critical, franchise-altering roster move is debated, these numbers give him an unassailable, ultimate credibility. You don't argue football with a man who holds this resume. You just don't. You listen.
Section 2. Brady's boardroom takeover. More than just a title.
You really have to understand the tension of these front office environments to grasp what's happening. Imagine what it actually feels like when a minority owner with Tom Brady's resume walks into the room. Executives, scouts, general managers, these are men who've spent their entire lives evaluating talent. But the second he walks in, the air in the room completely changes. The dynamic instantly shifts. Former Raider star linebacker Kirk Morrison recently went on the Jim Rome show, and he dropped what I consider a massive revelation about what is actually happening in those rooms. Read this slowly with me. Morrison says, when you talk about a boardroom, everybody's all in on what the decisions are going to be, and he's an extra voice when it comes to making some of those final decisions. The subtext here is just staggering. He calls him an extra voice. But actually, scratch that. Let's be real. We all know the truth. When Tom Brady weighs in on a final decision, it ceases to be a suggestion. His quiet, undeniable influence is the undercurrent directing the major roster calls, the coaching shifts, the very heartbeat of the Raiders front office.
Section 3. Shaping the franchise quarterback. Molding Fernando Mendoza.
And this brilliantly illustrates how Brady's impact isn't just confined to the pristine, air-conditioned executive suites. It's bleeding out onto the practice field, focused squarely on the single most critical, high-pressure position in all of professional sports. He is actively mentoring rookie Fernando Mendoza for the long-term future of the franchise. I want you to really spend a second with that mental image. Picture the greatest to ever touch a football, standing out there on the sweltering practice fields of Henderson, Nevada, personally shaping a young, raw rookie. He isn't just giving him passing tips. He is actively instilling core quarterback qualities. He is passing down the psychological warfare, the pre-snap diagnostics, the absolute rootlessness required to win in this league. Mendoza isn't just being coached by a standard staff anymore. He is literally being molded by the standard of perfection itself.
Section 4. Gruden's Grim 2026 Prophecy, a harsh reality check.
But look, for all the soaring ambition, for all the boardroom coups and the intensive quarterback mentorship we just talked about, harsh reality is waiting on the field. Speaking on Wake Up Barstool, former Raiders head coach Jon Gruden delivered an incredibly sobering assessment. He said, "I think the Raiders are going to improve, but unfortunately for the Silver and Black, this is a very tough division with established coaches and quarterbacks." Let's dissect this word by word because Gruden knows Vegas. He reached the playoffs with this very franchise back in 2021. He built a team that went to the Super Bowl years before that. When a man with that specific pedigree, who bleeds Silver and Black, warns you about the division, you take it seriously. What Gruden is subtly acknowledging here is a grim prophecy. Basically, despite Brady, despite all the front office changes, Gruden genuinely believes the Raiders are destined to finish dead last in the AFC West.
To put that into perspective, just look at the colossal hole they are trying to climb out of right now. The 2025 reality? 3 wins. They were literally the worst team in the National Football League. 3 wins in a modern NFL season is a profound mark of shame. It's organizational failure on every conceivable level. Now, look at the 2026 benchmark. 6 wins, under the brand new regime of head coach Clint Kubiak and general manager John Spytek. Now, doubling your win total sounds like a massive leap, right? It sounds like great progress. But meticulously consider what that actually means in the NFL. Going from 3 wins to 6 wins doesn't make you a contender. It definitely doesn't put you in the playoffs. It doesn't even make you a winning football team. 6 wins is simply the bare minimum for survival. It just proves the bleeding has finally stopped. And honestly, that's all anyone can ask of this team right now. Just compete. Just stay in the games.
Section 5. An unforgiving AFC West. The battlefield ahead.
So to truly understand why Gruden is so deeply pessimistic, we have to zoom out. We have to make this narrative bigger. Because the Raiders aren't rebuilding in a vacuum. They are walking into a terrifying divisional war zone. The landscape of the AFC West right now is a complete meat grinder. Let's start with the Leviathan in the room, the Kansas City Arsenal. Now, last year the Chiefs had a rare down year, right? They missed the playoffs due to just a massive, catastrophic wave of injuries. But that sleeping giant has awoken, and they have spent this entire offseason violently fixing their flaws. Look at this list. They completely addressed their injury crisis. They added explosive running back Kenneth Walker to an already lethal offense, giving them a ground dimension that is just terrifying to scheme against. They went into the draft and secured Mansour Delane. And if that wasn't enough, they fortified their defensive line by securing multiple new pass rushers who are fully expected to step into starting roles immediately. The Chiefs didn't just get healthy, they got faster, they got deeper, and they got significantly more violent in the trenches. When you are trying to rebuild a broken franchise from the ground up with a rookie quarterback, looking across the field at a fully rearmed, angry Kansas City Chiefs roster is the literal definition of a nightmare scenario.
And the threat level doesn't even stop there. Look at the rest of the division. The Denver Broncos finished 2025 with the absolute best record in the NFL, falling just 1 game short of the Super Bowl. They are an established, veteran powerhouse firing on all cylinders. Then you look over at the Los Angeles Chargers. They already had a generational talent in quarterback Justin Herbert, but now they've brought in offensive mastermind Mike McDaniel as their offensive coordinator, massively upgrading their scheme to maximize him. A Broncos juggernaut and a McDaniel-engineered Justin Herbert offense. These lethal upgrades severely throttle any hope for Vegas. It is a suffocating, almost impossible environment for a team that is just trying to find its footing.
Section 6. The ultimate presidential play. Expanding the persona.
Now, what's really interesting about this next part is that we are about to drastically shift gears. We're moving from the granular logistics of football to a massive, unprecedented off-field theory. A theory so large it dwarfs the sport itself. NBC Sports insider Mike Florio recently dropped this quote. He said, "Brady's play could be to lay the foundation for a presidential run." Just let the sheer weight of that statement linger in the silence for a second. We are no longer talking about Super Bowl rings or draft capital or who's starting at left tackle. We are talking about the highest office in the land. Now, to be clear, we're just unpacking the source material here, but Florio's bombshell theory demands absolute seriousness. It frames every single thing Tom Brady is doing right now in a radically different light.
So let's walk chronologically through the breadcrumbs laid out by these insiders, because the timeline is fascinating. Look at 2024.
FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried, before his empire completely collapsed, reportedly tried to get Brady to run for office and even ran independent political polls to gauge his effectiveness as a candidate. This means actual data exists on his political viability. Then, from 2024 into 2025, Brady aggressively expands his public persona. He doesn't just fade into a quiet retirement playing golf. He takes the massive Fox broadcasting job, staying in millions of American living rooms every single Sunday. He remains a fixture of the culture. By 2026, he entrenches himself in NFL ownership with the Raiders, cementing his status not just as an athlete, but as a high-level executive and a legitimate power broker. When you string these events together, some analysts argue they look less like a retired athlete trying to stay busy and more like calculated, deliberate steps toward ultimate power. Is the future an actual run for office?
Which leaves us staring at arguably the most fascinating question in sports today, and perhaps even beyond sports entirely. What is Tom Brady's true endgame? Is he simply an ultra-competitive athlete trying to fix a broken Las Vegas franchise because he just can't walk away from the game? Or is the Las Vegas Raiders front office merely a stepping stone, a testing ground for a man whose ambitions stretch far beyond the gridiron, casting a shadow over the entire American landscape? The fate of the Raiders, and perhaps much, much more, hangs entirely in the balance.
If you want to keep tracking this shadow empire and every other massive power move across the league, you are absolutely in the right place. Subscribe to NFL Nexus right now. Like this explainer and comment your thoughts down below. I really want to know, do you think Brady is aiming for the playoffs or the presidency? And if you want to take it a step further and get even more involved, support the channel by becoming an NFL Nexus member today to get exclusive access. The game never stops, and neither do we. We'll see you next time.